Thanks for still being here. I think it's a long day. And you saw a lot of fascinating projects, new innovations, technology. I would like to convince you in these remaining few minutes that this is great, but not enough. If I can have my slides, please. Or just click, okay. So maybe you have seen this on the metro. Someone took the freedom to slightly change the poster of the event of today. Want to be part of the revolution, stop relying on technology. And the idea behind, I don't know who did this, but I'm sure that the idea behind this is that it is naive to believe that we can master all the challenges we have just by relying on technology. A colleague of mine recently said this: every approach that promises both bold action and the continuation of current practices and systems leads us inexorably into magical thinking. And someone who doesn't know that I'm using his slide, Sascha Nick, he's sitting here from EPFL, together with Philipp Thalmann, has done a fascinating project on aviation. And they showed that if aviation wants to achieve their zero emission goals, they have to reduce by 85%. So we can only fly in the future 15% of what we're flying today. But the industry has ambitious growth goals. And how do you get these two things together? Well, somewhere in the future, around the 40s, some magic will happen. So some new technology will come in and will solve the problem. In reality, and there's another colleague from the University of Lausanne, Julia Steinberger, in reality we know that any change that we want to achieve requires radical change of behavior, of lifestyle, of habits. Julia and her colleagues, they took the donut, so the inner part, which is the minimum that we need to live well, and the outer part, which is the maximum that we can take and absorb and consume from the planet, the planetary boundaries, and put countries into that, wondering where are we, how are we performing. And what you see on this slide is that we are not performing that well in both categories. So some countries are very good in creating good living conditions, but they use more than one planet for that. And others are very good in not overusing the planet, but they don't create good living conditions. The place where we have to be is this one. And as you see on this graph, there is no country in that place. How do we get there? Not through technology, at least not through technology alone. What we need is a radically rethinking of how we live together. The bad news is that people are super interested in the ecological crisis, in sustainability, as long as they don't have to change. A Guardian article from, I guess, 3 weeks ago, showed that people support any kind of initiative that doesn't involve themselves. Governments and corporations planting trees, everyone in Europe is in favor of that. But as soon as you talk about limitations of my own life, you have only a tiny minority who is willing to do that. So we all know, and we probably all agree that to a certain degree we have to change how we live, but we are not willing to change. So how do we bridge that gap? I don't know whether someone from Nespresso is in the room, but probably not someone who worked at Nespresso when it was founded, because this is the first Nespresso capsule coffee machine. And it has something that modern Nespresso machines don't have anymore. And you probably see that, right? What is it? Yes, the handheld. So why did they put a handheld on the machine? It's totally inefficient. They could have saved some money by not doing so. But the reason is simple. And I don't know whether they did this consciously or unconsciously, but the reason is very simple. If you think about the best coffee, what do you think about? What comes to your mind? An Italian bar, right? And I'm a bit biased here, I must admit that. But that's an Italian bar where you get the best coffee. So they imitate with their machine the design of an Italian bar coffee machine. Because they came with a new innovation that nobody knew, and that is so against our habits of consuming coffee. They had to build a bridge. So implicit in people's mind when they see that machine, a story starts to emerge. It's the story of the Italian bar coffee. And storytelling is something that accompanies us since the very beginning. This is Lion Man. The German name, because it was found in Germany, is gender neutral, but in English it's called Lion Man. Probably it's a man, we don't know. It's a mix of a human being, body, and the head of a cave lion. Again, this was found in a cave in southern Germany. It's 30,000 years old. It's made out of ivory. And experimental archaeologists tried to redo this lion man. And they estimated, after trying that it would take about 250 hours to produce it. 250 hours. 30,000 years ago is Ice Age. Food scarcity. So you must imagine a little tribe releasing someone from finding food and producing art. You probably all know this Maslow pyramid, which, by the way, was never done by Maslow himself, but which gives the impression that we only do the art stuff at the end, the peak of the pyramid, when we are no longer hungry, when we have shelter, when we have friends, and then we come to art. But this is rubbish. Art is always in parallel to food. Food and art have equal importance for these people. Maybe because there was a story behind that figure which we don't know, and which we will never know. But we know that this idea came up again in other parts of the world at later stages. Sekhmet is the god of war and peace in the pharaonic Egypt, and Vishnu is, I guess, the goddess of chaos and order in India. Maybe something like that was enlightenment. Enlightenment was not just a figure. It came with a way of storytelling that included music. They found in the same cave and in caves next to the Lion Man cave also flutes. Same age, 30,000 years ago. We must imagine this tribe telling stories, or someone telling stories, the shaman, while they sing and dance together. Think about the Lascaux cage, where you have the reindeers. And it's actually not 5 reindeers, it's 1 reindeer, because you take the light and you move it. It's like a flip book, and it becomes a cinema. Moving up into our modern world, this is a gorge cave in Australia. For Aborigines, it was a holy place for 46,000 years. For Rio Tinto, it was an ore mine, and they blew it up with dynamite. So which story is right, which is wrong, we cannot tell. But what we can say is that what this cave means depends on the story we share. That's the important thing. And we can only move forward solving the ecological crisis when we find the stories that we share that gives us the meaning, that creates the willingness to sacrifice something. Why would I change my lifestyle if the story that goes around is we are doomed? Or the other story, which is technology will save us. None of these stories will make me change my life. So what is the vision that creates this motivation for people to do something different? What is it where we want to go with our society while solving the ecological crisis? Flying started with mythology, right? It moved forward with Da Vinci's imagination of how such a machine could look like. He didn't have the power to make it fly, but it would have been able to fly with the right power. So the result, the change in the world, comes after a long process of imagination. So how do we want to imagine our future? There's a new genre called hopepunk. And hopepunk is a third type of story, and that's the one we need. It's not that we are doomed story, it's not that technology will save us story, it's a story of how do we imagine a good future under the conditions of the change that is currently happening, including the grief that we need to move beyond the denial, to say there is something we lose and it's painful and we suffer, but we have to go beyond. There is something else we can create. And this something else we need to find out on the level of organizations, on the level of societies, and on the global level, because if we want to change this situation together on a global scale, we need at least a partial overlap of the stories. So that is what I think any startup who works with technology should keep in mind. You have to package what you're doing into a story that makes people move towards something that is supporting and contributing to the change we all need. Thank you.